we briefly talked about that. The whole thing is really downtown development and how can we bring more traffic, more visitors, more people who spend money in the city into the city. This is what it's about, and I think an attraction like this combination of this building plus connection to the park I would say would be a big competition to Utica, which is always packed every weekend when they close their street. But this is just much higher level, higher quality, I would say, than Utica is. I could see that this is busy than even in the off season from 6 o'clock in the morning when the first people show up and have a cup of coffee and until late evening, they drink their last beer and sit outside. Everybody wants to sit outside. We see the success of the music in the park. Every time I drive by, it's full, right? So people want to sit outside. We see this everywhere in so many other cities, as you know. And I think this is a good opportunity to do that. Very beneficial from I think from a tax revenue point of view. If you look at it just narrow on this one thing, besides the attraction.
Are there any questions from council?
Yeah, I'm gonna start out first, but this is nothing unusual. As far as, okay, basically, from the last time I heard this, okay, we're looking at going from having stores in there to having like a banquet hall. Am I correct? Is that what we're looking at? As far as the one end, not where the bar is, not where the cooking is, and sandwich or whatever, right that one area. But the other end, which would be the west end, would be more like a banquet hall for like weddings and stuff like that.
It's also a beer hall. So a beer hall is where it's kind of like an expansion of a tap room, but much larger space. So you have a bar in there, you have bar service in there. But you have this idea of the ability to have kind of this pavilion in the park. So just as people come into town, you see all this activity happening in the corner. So it's not meant to be just an event space or just a banquet space. It is that, but it's also a beer hall.
It would be
If you want to stand up.
it would be a space which is open daily.
On the internet, they can.
Yeah. It would be a space which is open daily, not just for special events. In the
Basically, what
morning.
I'm looking at, okay, you have 4 doors that are gonna open up towards the north, okay?
Yeah.
Now, if we're doing music in the park on Saturday night from 6 to 8, when them doors are open, are there gonna be bands playing in there for a wedding and stuff like that?
No, we're good neighbors, so I don't think that'd be a problem. No, I think one thing feeds off the other. So if there's a musical event going on in the park, I just think that gives people a longer reason to stay and listen to the music and stay afterwards and spend some money and enjoy themselves too.
Any questions from council at this point? Any comments from the community?
Got a couple of questions.
Microphone. Sorry. No, I know it is.
For the Woolworth building portion of the project, what kind of investment is Tangle Roost or Seal Realty looking at, and what kind of job creation do you expect?
I have an idea. I'll give you a rough number for the answer to Dave Noble's question on the investment. I'm thinking it would probably be, in addition to what we've already spent on getting the building ready for development, in addition to, so an additional development, probably around $2 million for building improvements and the FF&E. So there's a new kitchen going in, obviously that's a few $100,000. There's new brewery facilities, that's another few $100,000, and there's building costs associated with those things. We'll also be putting in air conditioning and bathrooms for a large space. So plus finishing out the interior, so and the garage door. So all that is probably roughly around $2 million. I don't have the budget numbers in front of me, but it's roughly.
So this can be done without basically closing the street.
Can it be done without the city closing the street?
permanently.
I think it should be, yes, it could be possible, yeah. I mean, we like the idea of being able to have as much indoor and outdoor connection as possible. So sidewalk improvements are absolutely essential.
I understand that point.
And streetscape improvements, really highly desirable. You know, the street needs shade. It's got shade on one side, and the shade always only goes to the north. And so there's no shade really on the street. So that would be beneficial. Those kinds of things would really be helpful. I mean, I think for it to have its greatest success, a lot of the elements that have been shown that the community wants to see, you know, when it's feasible, right, would be a great way to aim to. So things we do now, we ought to integrate into a kind of an overall master plan, so that the city's investment is well spent and nothing's being undone. It's just recently redone.
What's the overall timeline, do you think?
Well, we're ready to get started. We do have permitting. We had a little bit of a roadblock with the permitting last year. We actually ended up withdrawing our permit. And it was mostly around the artwork that's there. And so hopefully that would solve soon and will allow us to move forward. And be in a very happy and congenial and cooperative way. So that's what we expect and hope for.
What do you expect out of the city, and how best do you expect it?
Well, I'm not in the business of telling people how to spend their money.
Well, no, I understand that, but I noticed that this would not work unless we actually do a lot of work on the street.
Well, we can.
Flow it into the park. I
Well,
understand.
we won't be able to do this overnight. We have construction to do, and so, and then permitting to do as well, and then we have to make sure that the mural is, if we come to a conclusion on that, is safely relocated. So there's these things, but as soon as that happens, we're ready to start. And we probably have about, you know, depending upon lead times, 3 to 6 months of construction. That's what we're looking at for that. Some of these things we really want to open by year end. That's mostly on the back of house side, so that we can get those things rolling. On the public side, I think it would be in everyone's best interest to have this in great working, functioning order by next spring, so that we can open up for, you know, the summertime, or the big tourist season, or the big splash. But I mean, I think not saying that doesn't mean if it's not done by that time, I turned it off. Did do that on purpose.
Dave, couldn't hear you.
Yeah, you know, as long as things are in progress, you know, we understand things take time. We all have to be patient and cooperate with one another in that regard. You know, I'm sure we can work something out. We all went through COVID together, and we all made do, right? And we all did okay. Most of us.
But the question is more of the details down the road, but when you mentioned it being more of a public space when it's not being reserved out or rented for an event or something of that nature, the beer garden aspect of it that's right out open to the park. My mind, you just said renovations including bathrooms, and so I'm curious as to how public of a space are you meaning?
Well, I knew this question was coming.
Because, you know, one of the requests that we get all the time is more public bathrooms in our downtown area. Currently, the 807 building is the de facto public bathroom. What is your, obviously that's a business idea for down the road, but just briefly, when you knew it was coming up, so what's your thoughts on it?
Well, I think that's one of those things that has to be managed properly, because you don't want to become the restroom for everyone every day. But I think it is good, because like we talked about, there's events on Jackson Plaza in the park. We want them to come into our building, and we're probably not going to be policing them too carefully to see, you know, who bought a beer on the way in or on the way out. We hope our product is good enough they'll do that, and want to spend time in there. And I think by and large that'll happen. At the same time, you just don't want anyone off the street, you know, using your restrooms, or you can become like a Starbucks in Portland. You know? So we don't want that. But there's a good happy medium in there, and I think that, and I probably shouldn't have said that. But nonetheless, I think public use of it is probably feasible, because I think the whole idea is events in the park, events in the square are good for business everywhere else. And so if we can help facilitate that with, you know, restrooms, I'm sure that could work.
Well, I'm looking at basically like when we have music in the park sometimes, few people would rather not use porta potties, etc. Not saying they wouldn't buy a beer and carry it across the street, because that's not for me to look at, but that's, you know, that's just a thought there. You know, if you got people coming across to use the restroom, sometimes we need, you know, the band members to go in and change clothes real quick, the restroom, stuff like that.
Oh, yeah, sure, absolutely. Has the city contemplated a social district?
What's that?
A social district? Where you can take your beer and walk across the street?
In a roundabout way.
In a roundabout way, we do have that, yes.
Yeah.
I think it extends from, Lafayette Street down to Jordan Block, in between LaSalle and Columbus Street. I'm correct.
Okay. Does it come up to the park?
Yeah.
Oh, great.
I have to have the chief tell me that.
Okay, so then you can take your beer and take it across the street, as long as it's in a container, appropriate container. That's it. Good.
I have a question about your bigger project. How does this tie into your creation of the conference center? Are you gonna do that as well, or is that off the table now?
Which conference center?
What you're gonna put in the Carson's building?
I'll try to answer that one. We are trying to meet the market where it is, and right now, this is where we think the market is. COVID changed things a lot. What we're doing here is what I would call a light touch. Yes, a $2 million light touch, but whatever we're doing here will be useful for another phase. So it doesn't preclude what we're doing on the conference center in the Carson building, but it does replace it temporarily. And so if someone's looking to do a couple hundred people conference, the space can be available for that. Because it's gonna function very nicely like that. It's a unique space. It's not appropriate for every business conference that we do at a Hilton Hotel downtown, but it'll be appropriate for a lot of those kinds of events and be unique. So it'll still be available for that. That would just be a matter of coordination and timing.
And how would this tie in? Cause I know on that plan, you were planning on having a rooftop, plaza on top of the Woolworth building. How would that tie in with this?
What we're doing right now, this phase, it doesn't preclude that. And so in the future, as the market grows and we can prove demand for it, we can look to the roof. We'll have to restructure it. But we still pretty much have a large, open area. But what that would involve is wherever we're doing anything on the roof, we have to provide vertical circulation, two means of egress, and elevator access, and we have to shore up all the structure. Because the structure is designed for 20 pounds dead load and people up there are being 200 pounds live. So it's a significant structural enhancement. Something we always planned on. What we're doing today just fits like a glove. So we're getting a good, I don't know how long interim is, but a really good use of the space right now, and doesn't preclude what we're planning in the future.
And your plans for Jackson, the old jail parking lot, you're calling to have that turned into some type of festival area. Would that be open for parking when you're not having festivals, or would it just be a festival area?
It really depends on the design, and that's one of the things. It's our property, so right now it's going to be parking, right? But if the city would like, and it's really up to the city, we're saying we think there could be a better use here, which would not be parking because there's plenty of parking in the area, and I think that parking is largely used by our employees, and so they can move across the street, across Columbus, because there's plenty of parking across Columbus, and on the city parking lot or elsewhere, and then that can become something else. You might still be able to do parking there, but it really depends on the design. And we're saying, hey, we have this land, we'll make it available to you, and we can have this open discussion about how it's best used. If it's got dual purpose for parking and for event space, or for outdoor recreation space, then it's probably a different kind of design than if it's parking.
But if you're designing this venue for a 300-person event, you're gonna need a lot of parking.
You probably need 100 parking spaces for an event of 300 people. And there's more than 100 parking spaces available in 4 blocks, much less city. Parking much more city. Yeah, that's point.
So also too, you were talking about basically that same spot, that if you put an ice skating rink in there, we know we can't park on it unless it's removable.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's correct, yeah.
You weren't there. We were in church a little while.
Yeah, I know.
Let me add one word, parking. I think we would rather give up this spot as parking and develop it into something nice. Parking is always a discussion, but if you go to a Walmart lot, you walk 3 blocks from this corner to Walmart, and people do that. And across the street from on Columbus Street, there's a big parking lot owned by the city, and it's always empty. You know, people would easily walk there. I would give up our parking spot and tell our employees, you park over there or wherever, 2 blocks away. Yeah, I think it's much better use, is what Nathan says, to turn this into something which is income producing. Parking lot doesn't produce anything. Actually blocks the development of the city.
Well, it's your property to do with what you want.
Yeah, but we would like to work with the city, and this is a collaboration to turn this whole area into something cool, and we would give it up if needed.
But if the street's closed, we're gonna lose all the parking on Jackson Street for down there, so I don't know how many spots are there now. So you lose that, you'll lose your parking lot. So I mean, it just shifts it
It
somewhere
shifts a
else.
little bit more, but the parking study, which was done by the city 3 or 4 years ago,
2018.
18, said even in the most busiest time in this 4-block region, only half of the parking spots are busy.
There's over 500 vacant spaces.
Yeah, there's enough parking. So I would happily give up our parking for something which is, first of all, nicer, and secondly, generates traffic and income and people. Nobody wants to sit in a parking lot anyway.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
One more thought, just one more remark, your questions what we're going to do, event space and stuff. A little bit this depends also what's going to happen down the road at the riverfront development.
Use the microphone, John.
Microphone? Okay. A little bit depends what is going to happen on the riverfront. Way back when, it's also 4 or 5 years ago, there were a couple of suggestions how this could be developed, and this could easily turn into event space, hotel and stuff like that. We also have to see what is going to happen there.
As far as getting bigger,
Yeah, everything gets bigger. Everything gets bigger, and then you don't. The city doesn't need, or we don't need 2 event spaces which can accommodate 300-400 people. One nice upscale event space would be enough. That this could be at the riverfront. Maybe it's going to be there, maybe not.
but basically though, what you're doing in the Woolworth building, okay, is something that we actually really need.
I think so. I think this it's very attractive for the city. And once again, the Woolworth building is a multi-purpose building. It will be open daily. It's not just a wedding is happening and now open the door and people go in and then they leave and you shut it down. In the morning at 8 o'clock, the doors should open up, and then there might be even a part of the farmer's market inside. And then if there's a big event, everything is mobile and can be moved around like a theater stage basically. And then you have would have a big event there, weddings or in wintertime a concert or anything.
Well, there's a lot of things.
And there's a kitchen which will serve food in this space every day. So basically it's an extension of the Buffalo and the tap room.